I'm pinning my fabric in between my actual cutouts because we want to put as few holes in these masks as possible. So by pinning outside of that range, we reduce the number of holes in the masks. Okay, and now we're just going to cut these out. I have 4 layers of fabric folded here, which will generate one full mask, but I'm going to be mixing and matching my fabric so that they're more interesting. So. Okay, so I've already cut my fabrics. I'm going to need 2 pieces for the front and 2 pieces for the back. So this will make 1 mask. Also need a 4-foot length of cotton cord or some other kind of shoelace material or something that can tie and stay tight when it's adjusted on the head. I'm just using this macrame cord that I found at Joann's, and I've cut it to be 48 inches long. This is the strangest cutting mat because it only goes to 35. Okay, let's go sew. Okay, so because I'm a fairly confident sewer, I'm just putting 1 clip on these to keep them in general place. I've got my right sides inside and my wrong side is outward facing. So I'm just going to start stitching a 1/4 inch seam. I'm going to back stitch. I'm using the wrong color thread. Oh well. And then I just knock that out. And I just continue going on. And that's it. Now at this point, you're going to clip them apart, and then around this curve, you're going to want to clip, you know, about every 1/2 inch or so up to the stitch line, but do not break that stitch line because if you do, you'll have to re-sew it. And do that for all of them. And then next we're going to take this over and we're going to iron these so that the seam lays down flat. And as long as we do that same pressing the same direction on all of the pieces, when we put them together on opposite sides, you know, insides will be facing each other, the seams are going to lie on either side of the seam so that it reduces the bulk of the actual mask. Okay, so I've turned this out. I'm going to remind myself to always have the nose part towards me, closer to my stomach, and I'm going to press this from the inside up. So see how I'm making that stitch seam lie flat against the upper part of the mask at this point. Okay, and we'll do the same thing for the blue. Flip it inside out, keep the nose to me, press it up. I'm just doing it this way. You can do it whatever way you want, but as long as you're consistent and whatever's most comfortable for you with your iron is fine. Okay, now we're going to take it back to the sewing machine. Okay, so now I'm going to take my right sides and I want them facing each other. So I'm going to have to curve these around each other, match up my seams, just kind of set them together, and then I look here to see if my seams are matching. And as long as they're matching, I'm going to take one of my clips. Again, I'm using clips because I have them. You can also use binder clips. You can also use pins, but if you use pins, you're putting holes in your mask, and that is not ideal. Okay. And then I'm going to clip all the way around the mask and come down here, find my seams, make sure they're matching, put another clip there. And somehow I've cut these slightly different lengths, not too far off. It's okay, it's pretty forgiving to have that kind of difference. All right, and then over here, same thing again. Line your fabric up. And then we'll leave that as my opening. So just to remind myself, I'm going to do that. And then we sew our 1/4 inch seam allowance again, backing up at the beginning and ending of your stitching. Now see, as I get here, this one's lying towards the front of the machine. This one's lying facing me underneath this way. Curve around. And rotate. And then we're done. I'm going to trim my threads. I'm going to turn it inside out, and then we're going to press it before we move on to the next step. So I'll meet you at the iron board. One step earlier, we need to clip the corners up to, but not actually catching my stitch line to reduce the bulk. If you want to remove some of this, you can too. It's not really necessary. We're going to press it out anyway. Okay, I'm going to turn this inside out. I'm just going to take my inner corners, push them out, make sure I get my corners as nice and tight as possible. Doesn't matter, they're going to be sewn under anyway, but turn this little guy inside out. A couple important things. Be sure and find the top of the nose before you kind of ease this fabric into its position. Same with down here. We're going to want to press it out. I find that kind of easing it and giving it a spread like this helps it stretch to where it's supposed to be. And then we're going to iron it. Now at this point, after this is done getting ironed, you could go back in here and take a piece of 4-inch long floral wire or a twist tie or any kind of flexible metal, and you can pop it up into this area inside. You just feed it in here and put it up in the nose piece, and then you would want to stitch around your metal and lock it in so it can't move. If you do that, you can get a better fit on these guys. And then over here, we're going to turn this, tuck this under 1/4 inch, like that. I just kind of use my fingers to kind of hold it in place. Get my iron in there in the middle, and then iron that puppy shut. You also could take it at this point. A really nice way to make this mask nice and sturdy would be to top stitch all the way around this entire thing. Okay, so now I'm going to take this and fold it over 5/8 inch. I'm eyeballing it because for me, I know exactly where it needs to be, but I measured one earlier and it was 5/8 inch. If you have smaller cording that you're using, or larger cording, I suppose, you might need to adjust that and possibly even the mask. Okay, and now let's stitch it. What I like to do at this point is move my needle over as far to the side, to the left, so that I get as big of a channel as possible. Now that we've switched our thread color, I'm going to have my needle over far left so that I can stitch as close to this edge as possible. And by the way, that stitching also closed that open end for me. So see, let's come over here, do the same thing. And now she's ready for the cording. Now to do the cording, we're just gonna cut 4 feet, like I told you, of the cotton cording. I'm using a macrame 3mm cord I bought at Michael's, actually, and picked up at their contactless delivery. They literally put it in the trunk of my car while I sat in my vehicle. Such a crazy new world. Okay, just about done. And there is our mask. Okay. Okay, so for this, we want to create a loop with this cording where the loop is at the bottom of the mask, because that will go over the head first. And I'm just shoving this stuff through here. Then I'm going to tie a knot in the end just to keep it from coming out and preserve as much of that as possible. Just kind of easing that knot up at the end. Because this is cotton, so it's not like polyester that you can burn and seal it. You got to use your muscles. Okay, so this is how it lies. And this will go over the head first, like such. Bring this down, gather it, and above the ears, and this is supposedly, according to nurses, the most comfortable way to wear it when you have to wear it long term, because around the ears is not as comfortable. And I'm just tying a knot in the back, or a bow. Ta-da!